Afternoon, this is Benjamin from Eclipse. We're back for a virtual IoT meetup. I think we've been pretty good at having one every other week over the last couple of months. So we're happy to be back to talk about Arduino. So you may or may not know that Arduino is actually a pretty useful platform to prototype IoT solutions. The Arduino IDE is pretty cool. It's been around for a while. But it quickly shows some limitations, which is why Doug Schaefer, who is our guest today, started to work on integrating Arduino support in Eclipse, and more specifically in Eclipse CDT. So Doug, welcome, and I think you have lots of demos for us today. So without further ado, I will leave the floor, or the virtual floor, to you.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone. Just a quick introduction to myself. My name is Doug Schaefer. I've been involved with the Eclipse CDT project since about 2001, so it's been many years. I wrote originally the CDT parsers and the indexer, and got involved with the CDT build environment and those kind of things. So I've been involved with CDT a long time, and we use it. I work for a company called QNX, which makes a real-time operating system, and we use CDT as the foundation for all our IDE tooling. So, so this Arduino thing is kind of something I'm actually kind of doing on the side, although it's really proving out a lot of the work that we're doing with CDT lately. So really, the main reason I got into Arduino is because I bought one. Got one of these Arduino Unos, because I kept hearing about, a lot of people are raving about how easy it was to get into electronics design using this little microcontroller. So I figured I'd try it out and see what all the hype was about. And really kind of had in mind building some little projects. I also bought a proximity sensor, and I actually eventually bought a Wi-Fi shield, and I wrote this little thing that, so when my wife and I were working in the backyard, we had a sensor out front in case somebody came up to the door so we could know when people came. And that kind of had a little minor success. The proximity sensor was pretty cheap, so it wasn't super great. But it was fun, it got me hooked. So when you get into the Arduino tools and ecosystem, first thing you're introduced is to the Arduino IDE. I'll do a quick. I got it over here. Oh, let me share my screen. So I have it over here, and it's starting up. So the first thing you notice is it's pretty simple, and it's interesting. I saw someone comment about it, and they actually called it Arduino Pad. Because really, other than a little notepad-like thing to type your code into, it's not as full features as the IDEs I've been used to, especially with CDT. And you look at Visual Studio. Anytime if you've done professional C++ programming, this helps you get your code in, and it actually is pretty good at managing, doing builds and downloading to the devices. It has, lets you select your board and sets everything up for you. So it's really easy to use. Good for people starting in the industry or starting with Arduino and maybe aren't used to doing serious C++. So it's a good start, but I wanted more. The other thing is that Arduino uses this. It's not even C++. It's kind of a subset of C++. So it hides a few things for you. And again, it's great to help people who are new to it, so you don't have to learn those things. But I find that there's only like two concepts missing that stops it from being a real C++ language. And really, that's the pound include of the Arduino.h file, and also for declaration. So in C and C++, you have to forward declare. You have to declare the functions you're going to use and the variables you use above when you use them. So kind of what I wanted to do is take all the experience I had with CDT and see if I can build an IDE from the ground up for Arduino. So I did that. It's been a year in the works. There's a couple of things that happened along the way that have made me really excited about it. And really a lot of those things came from the Arduino people themselves, because this IDE is very configurable based on a set of metadata files. And they've been very open about the specs for those files. And you can actually, it's up on their wiki. You can look at, they have a way to specify the spec for defining the boards and how they're packaged and how builds are done. Basically, everything's parameterized. So my theories was, as I was building this Arduino IDE before this came about, I was kind of building a standard CDT type thing, but it was cumbersome and wasn't very easy to use. But this has really helped me along the way. So let's get right into it. So I want to show the thing in action here. So I'll talk about some of the technologies that I've been using from Eclipse that make it easier. So the first thing to remember is to get access to it. It's up in the Eclipse Marketplace. If you've never used the Eclipse Marketplace, it's a treasure trove of plugins. Even just the other day, I was looking for a JSON plugin, so I just typed JSON in here, and it gave me actually a selection of them. So I actually installed this one. So there's a lot of stuff up here, and it's, if you're ever looking for a plugin for Eclipse that you're not sure where to get it, this really helps. And if you're making plugins for Eclipse, make sure you get them in here. What we have is Arduino. So if you search for Arduino, you'll see the Arduino C++ IDE. So that's the one I'm working on. There is actually another one out there. Really, the main difference between the two is that this one is GPL, and where mine is, it's really from the Eclipse CDT project. It's an official Eclipse project, built from the ground up, as I mentioned. So we're trying to figure out ways for us to work together on features, and we'll hopefully get there eventually. But today I'm going to talk about the Arduino C++ IDE. So I've installed it. So one of the things you want to install it into, actually I forgot to, if you go to the Eclipse downloads page, so the current version runs on the Eclipse Mars. I'm working on some stuff for Neon. So if you're using an early Neon build, this isn't going to work because a lot of it's in progress. But if you get the Eclipse IDE for C++ developers, that's kind of the base in which so that gives you the CDT on which the Arduino stuff is based on and gets everything set up. So that's what I'm running here is the Eclipse IDE for C++. So you just install it. Now, the next thing you need to do is you need to tell it which boards that you want to build for. And this is actually something I've changed in the last 24 hours, actually. So if you go into the preferences in Eclipse, once you've installed the Arduino plugin, you'll see an Arduino section here. And if you look at the preferences, and this may be pretty small, but basically you give it the URLs for these packages. So a package is it's essentially a JSON file that describes the types of boards that are built with this package. Actually a set of platforms, and each platform describes the boards and the tools that you use to build. Let's actually take a look at one of those files. And this is why I wanted the JSON editor. So when you install, basically, actually, let's go back to that. So what you do with that is you install it. If you have the Arduino plugin and there used to be this boards page, you actually want to use the platforms page now. So this lists the platforms that are available to you. It lists the ones that are installed. So I've already installed the standard AVR boards, which the Uno is one. And you can actually click on the details to see the list of supported boards by that package. So you can see there's the Unos there. I've also installed an ESP8266 package. That's because I also got one of those. And it's really cool. Again, ESP8266 has this huge community of people building SDKs for it. And one of them is an Arduino-based one, which lets you write Arduino sketches that run on your ESP8266. So I'll show that in action. So this is how you install it. And you click, if you want to do a new one, you click install and just click OK, and then it'll go and download it. So to look at these package files, kind of give a hint of how this all plugs together. If you take a look at, so everything gets downloaded into the .arduino CDT. And here's the packages and inside. So I have the two packages I've installed. You get essentially the SDK, which is here, as well as you get the tools that are used. And generally, you get a compiler and a uploader. ESP8266, the same thing. Here's the SDK, Arduino SDK for it, and the tools. In this case, I got an extra tool for making a SPI file system that you can include in your image. I haven't actually tried that yet, but it looks pretty cool. So basically, again, this is all data driven. So if you look at this package index, basically a package that lists all the platforms. So these are the AVR boards, and there's an entry here for each version of that. And again, the list of boards, to list the tools that it uses. And again, each version, and this package also includes platforms for Intel. So the Edison and the Galileo boards. And also there's, the ARM boards that some of the newer Arduinos are using. So basically, and so I built the Arduino C++ to plugins to basically leverage all this metadata. The other piece of that, so that gets me the packages to download. And when you look at the if you look at an SDK, there's actually a few more files in here. So there's a platform.txt file, and that lists this gives all the detail for each of the, actually there's two files. Let me get to the other one. So the boards.txt lists all the boards and basically the parameters to support building and uploading for those boards. There's also support for reflashing. And then that feeds into a platform.txt file, which actually gives me all the compile commands. So the CDT, part of the important things with this is that right now I'm in CDT, I'm building a new, really simple build system that lets me be able to plug in makefile generators, or basically an entire build system. So this Arduino, I've built an Arduino build system that leverages the contents of these files to generate makefiles that just, and everything's parameterized. So there's very little if any, hard coding in the CDT itself. So the beauty of that is, as new boards come out, you don't have to upgrade your Arduino C++ IDE. It just adapts to them.
Doug, I have a question.
Sure.
Yeah, there is this, I think it's sort of a fork of the Arduino IDE called Energia. I think it's used mostly by TI, I think, for their Launchpad platform. Do you know if the CDT IDE would support those boards as well? Have you looked into that?
I haven't looked into that, but it does raise a great point. So right now, and somebody asked me about this because the ESP8266 also has a bunch of SDKs that aren't really Arduino. But the question does come up, like with this flexibility, can I do non-Arduino boards with it? And my feeling is yes, because it is so flexible. Basically, it's giving you the C compiler commands, the C++ compiler commands, the linker commands. There may be different things about how the final file that you download gets created, because right now it's there's 2 formats that are supported here. There may be more that we want to add to it. But yes, the theory goes, I think we can actually support all microcontrollers and all the different SDKs for them, so including the TI ones, the ESP ones. There's a new ESP chip coming out, the ESP32, which sounds like they're going to base on OpenRTOS. So there'll be that SDK. And really, all you have to do is for each one of those things, create a new set of files, a new boards.txt and a new platform.txt. And my plugin should be able to build for those boards. That's yet to be proven, but I think that's an important future direction. I want to take this to kind of grow it beyond just the Arduino, because there's a lot of cool things happening in the microcontroller ecosystem, and it keeps growing and growing, and a lot of cool things you can build. Okay, so that's how so let's see this thing in action. So part of this is, again, we're building a lot of new frameworks for Eclipse, and not just CDT. There's a couple other ones that we're using. And part of this, the Arduino C++ IDE to me was also an important project to do, to show off those new things and to show how, basically providing an exemplary implementation of how these things all play together. So the three main ones is the launch bar, which is a new UI element that we actually created for BlackBerry 10, but have now kind of reconfigure it to be more general and pushed upstream to Eclipse. It's this thing up at the top here. Basically, it provides a way for you a simple way to manage your launch configurations. So building and launching for different types of boards and different things. So with that, you never have to go to the old Eclipse launch configurations dialog. Everything kind of flows automatically from that, and I'll show you that once I get things going here. The other piece is a new target management system it's interesting because the Parallel Tools guys, they build tools for big IBM mainframes and such. It's the supercomputer guys built this remote system because they have the same problems as we do with embedded. You have to connect to remote devices. In my case, I'm connecting this little Arduino board. They connect to big mainframes and all the different processing nodes that they have. So they built this remote system, and so I'm leveraging that to do to be able to manage the connections to the Arduino boards. And the third one I'll show is the extending from that is how we do the serial monitor. Well, let's get moving. Let's show how this thing goes. So I plugged in my Uno. So the first thing you need to do is create a connection type. There's different connection types. Right now, I only have 3 of them installed, and the Arduino kind of builds on top of this serial port one. So one of the other things that we built is CDT now has native serial port support. There used to be this third-party package that a lot of people used called RxTX, but that project has died, and then actually the servers hosting it have disappeared. So it's actually really hard to find that plugin now. So that kind of kicked me to go and take a look at how hard it was to actually build a serial port plugin, and it wasn't that hard. So I whipped that together pretty quickly. So we used that to connect to the Arduino boards. So I'm going to do an Uno. Basically, it supports the all the boards that you have installed. You have to select which one. And I'm hoping to actually automate this a bit, because I can actually tell, given a serial port, what the USB device is connected to it. So hopefully I can make that a bit more automatic in the future. So we'll create the connection for the Uno. So as you see, it now shows up in my launch bar. So now I can create an Arduino project. So I can go new file, new Arduino project. Now I'll call it demo. But as you can see, it looks a lot like the stuff you get for Arduino. There's a setup and a loop. And mainly this works because there's actually a main defined in the library, which calls these things, and also does stuff for the serial port and interrupts and stuff. And again, the main difference, this is a C++ file, so you have to basically put the include statement for arduino.h. But once you do that, a lot of things start working for free. So I'm going to do a quick little Blinky standard hello world for Arduino. So the LED pin is 13 on the Uno. We'll set the pin mode. So one of the first things again, this is CDT under the covers. One of the first things you get, obviously, is there's automatic syntax checking and semantic checking. So a pin that doesn't know what pin is. And it's not really a good statement. But what I can do is I have content assist. So CDT's parsed Arduino.h and pulled all the definitions out of it and presents it in the content assist. So I'll set the pin mode, LED. LED built in, that's interesting. And to output. Again, you're already getting the benefits of CDT to help speed this up. We'll do a quick digital write. Right. Okay. Delay a little bit. Then we'll do the same thing over again. Oh. Again, that's a standard Blinky. So I can now build it. So let's take a look at that. So as you can see, it's building everything with the tools that we've specified, including giving some of the information on how big the resulting binaries were. And you can actually go over and take a look at it if you look in the build directory. So I've built for the Uno here, and it has all the object files for everything that's built and the binaries that's going to download. So the next thing you can do is then run it. So that's downloaded. And if we go back, let's see if I can get this working. If we go back to the Hangout, stop sharing. So you can see the LED is blinking. Pretty cool. So that's Blinky, but then that's kind of boring. If we go back to the IDE here. So next thing I want to show is so the other important thing that we built is a serial console. So you can go to click on your Uno down here in the connections view, and you can open a command shell. Now this is more general. It's meant more for like the SSH connection, but it does hook up to the serial port, and we can see the output. If we add a new serial, begin baud rate. So it's kind of hard coded to 115.200 right now. Actually, when doing that, I also want to show one of the other cool things about CDT is you can actually go look at the definitions of these things. So I can control kick on begin, and it'll take me to the actual definition of it. And you'll notice it's actually in a hardware serial class. Because if you click on serial, it's pound defined, or there's a kind of a type def kind of thing, or it actually it's externed. And the other important thing is because I know that the compiler that's used, I can actually ask the compiler for some information, and the CDT does that. So these things have been defined by the compiler so that I know which version of hardware serial it's using. Again, very powerful stuff out of the CDT that we're getting. I'm going to put a counter in here, n equals 0, and we'll do a I. Actually, we just hit the dot and wait, it'll come up. And we'll do n plus. Now, if I run that, so it does the build, downloads it, and then if I go back to my terminal, you can see the output coming out. So again, that's from a Arduino IDE, that stuff is table stakes. You need to be able to do that because for the most part, that's the only way you can debug. So that's with the Uno. So one of the cool things that we can do here is we can actually add I'm going to plug in I haven't plugged in yet, my ESP8266 board, and it's got an FTDI connection. So I have a cable for that, and so it should show up under USB serial. It actually is Adafruit has but it'll slow down the CPU. We'll create that. The other thing we can do, so in the console view, the workflows are a little strange that we need to fix up a bit. But you can create a new one and you can pin it. And I'll drag that over here. So you can see that running while we do things in the other console. And one of the things we're going to do is we're going to open up the command shell to the ESP. And we'll do the same thing again. And I'm going to put it into reset mode because you have to do that by hand. And so you see the garbage that comes out on reset. And so now you see the launch bar. And again, you can talking about the launch bar. So really it's about the launch mode that you're going to do. Right now, the Arduino boards just support run. There is some interesting work that I've seen for the ESP boards that put a GDB stub into the image. And that might let us do debug as well. So I'm going to keep an eye on that. You have the thing that you're going to launch. In this case, it's the demo project. In other cases, it may be other things, like right down to the standard launch configurations. And then you have what you're going to run it on. So, and it kind of knows, since this is an Arduino project, like, it really only supports Arduino boards. So I can click on that. And then none of the standard things run, build, and launch. And there's stop, but it's hard to stop these things. So build for that. Ooh, I forgot to pin this guy. There. So you notice as well, it started using the Extensa toolchain, which is what the ESP uses, as opposed to the AVR toolchain, which was used by the Arduino board. So based on the selection in the launch bar, it figures out what to build, what tools to use to build for that. And that's an important new capability we're adding for CDT. Right now, it's really hard to set up your build configurations and your launch configurations and all that. So we're really trying to simplify that. And then the launch bar goes a long way to help with that. And as you can see now, we got the same programming running on the ESP. So yeah, so that's kind of the round trip. That's kind of the most of it. The other thing that we're adding, and this is still a bit early, there's a huge collection of libraries that are part of the Arduino ecosystem. And again, this is data driven from another JSON file that we get from the Arduino website. But this thing has everything. It has like MQTT libraries, has Wi-Fi, so you can set up different Wi-Fi configurations, including the ESP8266. And I actually had one of these CC3000 boards. That's the Wi-Fi shield I got for my Arduino. So really, you pick one. And also, so the one fun one I had was I bought a few NeoPixels. So you can select that, and it'll actually download that library. And now I can do a pound include and get the NeoPixel library. And again, when you have to save before. So now I can use a NeoPixel stuff.
How about the examples? Many of the libraries, they come with a bunch of examples. Is that possible to quickly and easily import them?
In theory. So I don't have it. So I don't have anything built for that yet. But in theory, you should be able to import. I don't know if that one came with examples. So I can do. Actually, no, I want to do a new project. Well, that's a good question. I haven't tried that yet. There's a new import wizard that's being built by a friend of ours at Red Hat. Might make it simpler. Yeah, I actually don't even have an import wizard. That's a good point. And actually, that brings up another good point. Oops. So again, this is open source. It's been done as part of CDT. And we've had people gotten people to raise bugs, and we had some really good help early on. So this was released for preview in October. Actually, I'm going to bring up the page. So if you look at the marketplace, so this has a lot of more details. If you look at the Eclipse marketplace page for this, there's a link to an introductory video that I did, which I quickly went through a lot of that demo, but this covers it in a bit more detail. But you can raise bugs if this is a preview. It's a preview. Just came out in October 11th, so it's only like a month and a half and a bit old. So, and it's continuously change. As I fix things, I'm doing new builds along the way. So the best way to get new builds is if you do use the Eclipse check for updates. It will actually notice if I have a new build up and will update your plugin. But we've had a lot of great bugs. Actually, I want to check the den. So we've had almost 1,000. Actually, we've had 1,000 downloads now. So it's getting some traction, and people are raising really good bugs and really helping. Because really, it needs to be a community effort. Part of the reason is I only have the two boards, the Uno and the ESP8266. So if you have other Arduino boards, try this out. And if you find any issue, and we've had a lot of people found a lot of things that were easy to fix. So I've been able to quickly get that out. So raise a bug, and if you have any Eclipse knowledge as far as writing plugins and want to help out with code, I'm very welcome to that too. I actually have one change review up from I think it's Franz here. But there's a lot of feature requests here too. There's a lot of features we want to add to it. Yeah, I can't remember what started that conversation. But yeah, so there's a lot of things we want to do to add So one of the things, again, is being able to support other types of boards than just Arduino. Things like the USB stuff, figuring out what type of board you have at the end of your link, things like that. So if you find any bugs, please raise them. Other than that, any other questions coming in?
Yeah, no, we might not have been really clear asking you guys to please feel very free to send Doug some questions. You can comment directly on meetup.com, on YouTube, or send a tweet using the virtual IoT hashtag. I'm not seeing any questions, so maybe yeah, Doug, what would be, what's number one on your list? What is the new feature you're working on at the moment?
So what I'm working on right now, as I mentioned, I just did this kind of reconfigured how you install platforms, because I really wanted to make, what I didn't have before is dealing with versions and how to, because there actually have been a few new versions of AVR. There's a new version of ESP that came out since I first released things. So we do have the ability to upgrade now. I have to fix the icon because it's a really horrible icon. But the next step of that is to do the same thing with the libraries, because they're also versioned. They're really tiny, so I don't know if when I installed this NeoPixel one, it took it was under a second for it to download. But I want to be able to manage that more globally, so because it's a global. This is how you hook up libraries to a project, but I want to be able to support upgrading and downloading stuff from there too. So that's my. So that's kind of the early stuff. I think the next thing after that is really want to get into the ESP8266, because it's an important important thing for IoT, and actually I'll get to that too. Especially this RTOS, because I'm really really interested in how we can bring non-Arduino type SDKs into this. So basically I'm going to write platform.txt and a boards.txt file for this and see if we can build non-Arduino things with that. And beyond that, actually I have some, I really want to, so this is kind of my entry into the IoT world. So this, I actually proposed a talk for EclipseCon coming up in Reston, Virginia in March. Really kind of talking about Eclipse as the IDE for IoT. So I'm going to build this little thing. I take my ESP8266, hook up the NeoPixels and the proximity sensor, collect some data, show it being sent to an edge unit running QNX, of course. And it actually has a touchscreen. So it'll show this kind of the status of the pixels on the touchscreen, and you can manipulate clearing the alarm, for example, from there. It's also sending data up to the cloud. So basically I have an AWS account from the Amazon Web Services. So I'm going to play with their IoT, their new IoT platform that they've produced, and see if I can get it talking to my QNX board. I'll create a REST server up there to look at the data and show the same stuff on a browser or an Android app, and basically the whole clear alarm thing, be able to send commands down to the ESP8266 from there. And I really want to do that with Eclipse. So the great thing about Eclipse, and this is why I think it's the best IDE out there, is that it has support for all these things. So with the Arduino C++ IDE, that adds support for these little microcontrollers that you're hooking up to your IoT solution. You have the standard CDT stuff for building real embedded edge units, whether it's QNX or Linux. In this case, I'm using CDT's new Qt support to build the touchscreen app. But then you also have Java, you have web tools, you have the Eclipse and More project, which is a new, basically a fork of the Google or ADT that we're trying to grow a community around at Eclipse, make it easier to contribute to. AWS has their tools, which are actually out in GitHub and open sourced, easy to get at and use for setting up your environment on Amazon. And you can do this all from Eclipse, and it's the only IDE where you can do all these different things in one workspace. So it's pretty exciting for me, and I want to see where this goes and make sure that these projects are all in good shape to do this. So yeah, lots of things to do.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm not sure there's other questions at the moment. Maybe one more question from me. I think when you installed the IDE from the marketplace, there was another Arduino IDE up there. Could you maybe quickly highlight what would be the main differences between the work you've started doing and what's already out there?
Yeah, and I've had a number of discussions with the guys working on that, especially Jan, who's driving it. So theirs was, they were there first. It's borrowed a lot of components from the Arduino IDE and from, I think there's a number of things from the AVR plugins that they've borrowed. I installed it, and it's, part of it, I only looked at it a long time ago, and it looked a little bit too much like that, the old Arduino one. And I looked at the source code, and the first thing I ran into was a GPL header. So what I really want to do, again, why I'm doing this one is really to provide an official Eclipse IDE that supports it. And that's EPL, that has gone through the Eclipse IP. So the IP, getting all the benefits of the IP checks and all that. So you can actually take this and stick it in a product if you wanted to. But it's also showing off the latest CDT stuff. So as I'm building the new CDT build system, as I'm building the Eclipse launch bar, and as I'm working on the actually this is my other workspace. As I'm working on the connections view and the Org Eclipse remote and the serial console. So the one I'm building is I'm using the very latest because I'm also building the very latest. So I definitely, it's open source. It's the bugs are open. You can contribute. You can actually become committers on this if you wanted to. So I encourage them to look at ours. It's just I'm somewhat legally bound from being able to contribute to theirs. So that's kind of why I started my own, and I actually kind of did it. There's other things I want to be able to do with this too. I grow beyond just an Arduino IDE. So, I think they're two different things. I haven't actually looked too much at what they've done. They got a lot of downloads. They still get more downloads than I do. So people like it, so they can feel free to keep using it.
Yeah. Okay. But I guess what seems to be the main difference is regarding the intellectual property and the licensing. So I think this is where what you described about making it much cleaner in terms of IP is would probably be the main difference. But yeah, I'm hoping to see more collaboration between the CDT project and what those guys have been doing, which seems to be, as you said, pretty successful as well. So with that, I think we are out of questions. But it looks like people were particularly shy today. We had lots of viewers, nobody really giving us feedback. I guess that's a good sign. Everything was crystal clear. The next, I guess, one of the next updates for all this work, as you mentioned, Doug, would be EclipseCon. So, by the way, for all of you guys who are watching this webinar, feel free to, if you'd like to join our community more closely, feel free to submit a talk. We're still calling for papers until I think the end of this week. So if you'd like to join us at EclipseCon in Western Virginia in March, please check out eclipsecon.org. And in terms of upcoming virtual IoT webinars, if I were to quickly share my screen, We have a couple of webinars about industrial IoT lined up. So in 2 weeks' time, we're going to talk about a new Eclipse project called Rise V2G. In this context, V2G meaning vehicle to grid. So that's a standard for implementing charging station to electric cars communication. So I think we will learn a lot about some of the stuff that's happening in this space, and about factory automation at large. There's this very popular standard called OPC UA, and so we will be back after the Christmas holiday for a webinar to learn more on OPC UA. I think we are also trying to arrange a webinar around Amazon AWS IoT that Doug mentioned. So this will probably show up shortly. And as always, if you guys would like to propose your own presentation, feel free to drop me a note. I would also appreciate if you would to comment and to give any kind of feedback really on the Meetup group. I think you can use this this group review thingy on the meetup.com website. Any kind of feedback will be appreciated. We would like to to make this virtual IoT meetup yours. So if you feel that we're missing some topics, just let us know. If you think you would be the right person to cover a topic, let us know as well. So that's it for today. Thanks all for watching. Thanks, Doug, for the very extensive demo. So if people were to remember one link, I guess that would be just download whichever version of Eclipse and use the marketplace to add the Arduino functionality in there.
Yep, that's it. And raise bugs and let me know. Like, you can reach me at Twitter. I'm Doug Schaefer at Twitter. So feel free to ask me questions there or send me emails and stuff. Appreciate the feedback.
Awesome. Thanks for your time, Doug, and thanks all for watching. We'll be back in 2 weeks. Bye-bye.